what do you even say after a loss like that? The Blue Jackets get curb stomped by the Arizona Coyotes, and now we have to figure out why that happened, and hopefully maybe it won't happen again. It will happen again. But we're going to talk about the game, and we're going to talk about what's coming up next for the Blue Jackets today on Locked On Blue Jackets.
Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to bring you news, stories, yelling. That's going to be a big feature of today's episode. And game recaps, previews, player news, updates, everything that you could want and more about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and also over on YouTube. So if you haven't hit subscribe over there, then feel free to do so. It helps me out. It helps you out. You get notified when all of the episodes go live. So it's win-win. And we love winning over here at Locked On Blue Jackets. It's a shame that the team doesn't seem to love winning as much as we do. So I guess we'll talk about that because the Blue Jackets, like I said in the cold open, they get curb stomped by the Arizona Coyotes. Those Arizona Coyotes, the ones at the bottom of the basement, underground, in a bunker, under the ocean. Those Coyotes, they win 6-3 because the Blue Jackets just didn't try, I guess. Just a real embarrassment of a game for basically everyone involved. I watched 80% of the game. So, maybe the 20% that I didn't watch was better, but it was just the first two periods were just they got caved in. It didn't help that Connor Ingram decided to play like a Vezina candidate. He, I believe, made 30 of 33 saves. So a 909 save percentage, which, I mean, hey, good for Connor Ingram, who has previously been not very good this season. But the Blue Jackets, I don't know, I feel like they kind of took a gamble with this game. They started Tarasov after he played phenomenally against the Rangers, and he allowed 4 goals on 12 shots, and they had to pull him. They just did. Elvis played fine in the third period, 1 goal on 6 shots. I mean, at that point, what do you even do? But it was, I don't know, the first period I thought was fine. Not great. The Coyotes made them pay on the power play with Shane Gostisbehere scoring his 3rd of the season. Honestly, Zach Kassian scoring might have been the point at which you're like, okay, maybe we should just call this game because it's not going to get any better from here. And hey, it didn't get better from there. 2-0 at the end of the first period, but for the most part, beyond the power play, and beyond the Kassian goal, which I thought was kind of just I don't know, an older goalie probably doesn't allow that goal. I think Tarasov is probably still working on getting a little bit stronger on the post and, not being pushed into the net like that, but it is what it is. Every young goalie has a game like this occasionally. So I'm not willing to, completely throw Tarasov to the wolves. Did he need to be better? Yeah. Is this worrying? Maybe a little bit, but he's also this is what his 8th NHL game ever, maybe. So it sucks, but it is what it is. But yeah, the first period I thought I was like, okay, not great. They've crawled out of bigger holes so far. The second period is where they really start getting caved in. Shane Gostisbehere scores again, and then Dylan Genther scores his 2nd of the season, another power play goal for the Coyotes because I guess we can't have nice things. We talked yesterday about the Coyotes power play being suspiciously good, 8th in the league. I suspect it's probably climbed up a little bit after that. They went 2 for 6 on their power play, while the Blue Jackets went 0 for 5, and have still failed to score a power play goal, minus that Jake Bean one that apparently still doesn't count. But in terms of the penalty kill, those two goals have knocked the Blue Jackets all the way down to 11th in the league, 81.5. Stick taps to Jess Belmosto of Locked on Flames. League average for the penalty kill is 76 point something. So the Blue Jackets are still above average, which, hey, at this point, I'll take above average. But the power play just continues to be dismal. We bumped the Coyotes up to 29.6%, good for sixth in the league, a whole 9% over the average, which, like, even bad teams can have good power plays, I guess. Like, I don't know what Columbus's excuse is. We're going to talk a little bit more about the game in just a minute, and that second period in particular, because I feel like that was the real kind of dagger in the heart of the Blue Jackets and also the fans. That's coming up in just a minute. But first, I've got to tell you about BetOnline, because it's where the game starts. It is your number one source for betting football and the start of the basketball season and any other sport that you can imagine. If you want to put money on the Blue Jackets picking first overall in the upcoming draft, hey, like, there are probably worse things to bet your money on at this point. Am I being melodramatic? Sure. However, I'm right. You can find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, in-depth analysis on every game of every sport in every league. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information, with live betting, up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, golf, the NFL, the NBA, and of course, the NHL. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action, because BetOnline is where the game starts. So that second period was just real bad. Like, on paper, I don't think it was horrific. The Blue Jackets in the first period, the Blue Jackets outshot the Coyotes 11-4 and got outscored 2-0. Like, their expected goals were something like 2.5 versus the Arizona's like 0.81, I think it was. Second period, Coyotes outshot them 11-8, but they just weren't doing anything. And the Coyotes basically gave them the runaround for the entire period. Like, I don't remember any of those 8 shots, really. I think Johnny Gaudreau rang one off the pipe, but that's probably the closest scoring chance that they had in that second period, frankly. They talk a lot about a bend, don't break mentality, especially on the Columbus play-by-play. So Jeff Rimmer talks about it a lot. Jody Shelley talks about it a lot. Bend, don't break. The Blue Jackets bent, and then they broke. They just, after such a strong showing in New York, and after that really good start against Pittsburgh, this was just the complete opposite. They kind of limped out of the gate a little bit, let them get a goal on the power play early, and then it just kind of fell apart after that. The second period, bad. Third period, improved a little bit, because the Blue Jackets actually did something and they scored 3 goals. If they'd started the game in the third period, then the Blue Jackets would have won, because they outscored them 3-2. They gave Jack McBain his first goal of the season, because of course they did. They love to give players their first goals. And then after that, Johnny Gaudreau scores his 5th of the season. Just a real Johnny Gaudreau kind of goal. Assist to Zach Werenski and Jake Bean. Ken Johnson continues his goal scoring streak. He's got 3 in the last 3 games. I believe he's on a 4-game point streak now, if you include assist. He's figuring it out. What did I say last week? I was like, when he figures it out, he's going to figure it out with capital letters, and 3 goals in 3 games. That's the big thing from this. The big thing to take away from this game, I think, is Ken Johnson, who has continued to shine, even when the team is bad. And, we talked about who's going to sit when Laine comes back. Obviously, Laine came back. I wasn't expecting huge things from him. I fully don't believe that he's 100%, but he really wants to play in Tampa Bay, I think. So that is what is happening. But we talked about when Liney comes back, who sits? And, my answer was, well, if Danforth is back, then probably Kent Johnson. But Danforth is out for the next 6 months. Shoulder surgery. Just really unfortunate. He was a guy that had a really good start to the season and was really looking effective. So that's, that really tough news for Danforth and the team. Hopefully he gets better and is ready to go next season. I believe the timeline will put him out for basically the entire regular season, which really sucks for him. But Ken Johnson is making a real case to stay in the lineup. If Danforth comes back, if they pick someone else up, if someone gets called up for whatever reason, Ken Johnson is making a really strong case to be like, hey, this is where I'm supposed to be. Keep me here. And I'm excited to see how he continues to grow and evolve. And he's a player that, again, he's a very, it reminds me a little bit of Johnny Gaudreau, if Johnny Gaudreau was a baby. He's making these plays. His skating is still not there, but I think it's getting better. You can see the improvement. His hockey IQ is there. He's making these plays, and, it's just not quite coming together yet, but it's gonna. You can tell that it's gonna, and I'm super excited to see what his ceiling is because I think it's gonna be pretty high. Unfortunately, 5-2. For some reason, they pulled the goalie at 5-2, which, I mean, is a choice that I wouldn't have made, but hey. Lawson Krause scores the empty netter. That's his second of the season. Makes it 6-2. Arizona puts the game in the bin, essentially, in the trash. Andrew Peeke scores with 9 seconds left because why not? So honestly, the 6-3 scoreline feels very generous for the Blue Jackets. Realistically, it was a 5-2 game, or even a 4-2 game if you're feeling, or no, it was a 5-2 game. Excuse me. Which again still kind of feels generous for the Blue Jackets. I'm amazed that they managed to score. For some reason, Connor Ingram decided to turn in a Vezina-winning performance because, again, that's kind of what Blue Jackets opponents do sometimes. I think about Scott Wedgwood, who hadn't won a game in 3 years and then made the Blue Jackets look like an ECHL team. But for the most part, I think it's tough because on paper, the Blue Jackets got goal lead. They had 33 shots. They won faceoffs. They got caved in by the power play because that's just how they do. They out-hit Arizona despite also outshooting them. Arizona blocked a ton of shots. The Blue Jackets had a ton of takeaways. They, in the first period, they outshot them 11-4. In the last period, they outshot them 14-4. The final shots were 33-19. By all accounts, this was a case of, oh man, goaltending, but it just, I don't know, there was a lot to dislike about this game. I think it feels unfair to say, but I think you've got to sit one of Bean and Gabranson. They're getting caved in on a nightly basis. Jake Bean had 2 points tonight, or last night, excuse me, but at this point, what do you something's got to change. Okay, maybe changing the third pair is not going to work wonders. Having Nick Blankenberg out, apparently, I didn't realize he was this much of a load-bearing defenseman. Apparently, he was holding the team together through sheer willpower, which is extremely funny because if you look at his individual stats, he's basically just above replacement level by himself. But every other player on the team seems to pick up their game. It's extremely funny. I've got some graphs that I'm going to put on the Twitter because it makes me laugh. So hopefully he's not out for any length of time. I think that probably will help. I didn't hate Boquist. I thought Boquist was fine. Obviously, he was looking to get back into it after sitting for probably too long. Again, it sucks that Nick Blankenberg had to be injured for Boquist to draw back in, but like I say, I didn't hate him. He was -1 on the night, but so was basically every other defenseman. Only had one official shot on goal, but I thought I liked his game. He only played 13.5 minutes. For some reason, I think Brad Larson has decided not to like Anna Boquist, which is a shame because, like I said, prior to him being taken out of the lineup, he was actually the best performing defenseman in terms of defensive impact. So who knows? Maybe they want him to play his offensive game more. Maybe they just like the defenseman that they've got. But for my money, one of those bottom pairing defensemen, you've got to sit them. Like, you've got to try something else. Like, I get it's tough with Blankenberg being out with an injury, but, you've got David Jiricek waiting in the wings. Call him up, see what he does. At this point, call Jay Christensen up as well. He's waiting in the wings. The Blue Jackets have a ton of right defensemen that are young, that are good. Just see what they can do. You don't have to sit Gabranson. Sit Bean. Honestly, I would make a case for sitting Peeke, except they're not going to sit Peeke because he's got goals in back-to-back games or whatever. But, I think a case could be made for sitting basically every defenseman that isn't Werenski or Gavrikov at this point. Because that's something's got to give. You can't keep going into games with essentially the same 6 defensemen and hoping that this time maybe it'll work, because the Blue Jackets have been getting caved in defensively. Yeah, they've been coming back and winning, but that's not, I don't know, it's not sustainable, and I think we saw that in the Coyotes game where they got caved in and didn't really manage to have much of a pushback because they got goalied by the other team. In a minute, we are going to talk a little bit about some upcoming games, and we're going to talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about tomorrow, and that's coming up next on Locked On Blue Jackets. But first, I've got to tell you about SimpliSafe, because the numbers do not lie. In the last decade, over 4 million people have chosen SimpliSafe Home Security to protect their home, and you don't earn the trust of that many people without doing something right. At SimpliSafe, your safety is the only thing that matters, and I know because I use SimpliSafe in my home, or the home that I'm staying in currently. It's not my home, but they have SimpliSafe, who protect you with cutting-edge security technology powered by 24/7 professional monitoring agents who always have your back. And here's the great thing about SimpliSafe. With that 24/7 professional monitoring, the agents call you the moment a threat is detected and dispatch police or first responders in an emergency, even if you're not home or can't be reached, or, you're away, you're at work, you're out for a run, whatever. SimpliSafe can dispatch police or first responders at the push of a button. Blanket your home in protection with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door. The HD security cameras are inside and outside your home, and they have smarter ways to detect motion that only alert you when a threat is real, and they've got hazard sensors that instantly detect fires, floods, and other threats to your home. They use proprietary advanced response technology to visually confirm when a break-in is real, so you can get the highest priority police dispatch. So customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplisafe.com/lockedonnhl. You can save 20% on your SimpliSafe security system when you sign up for an interactive monitoring plan, and you can get your first month free. Once again, visit simplisafe.com/lockedonnhl to learn more, because there's no safe like SimpliSafe. What do you like? I realized that I didn't do Cannonball of the game for the Penguins, the Rangers game at the weekend. So we're gonna do that real quick. We're gonna do Cannonball of the game for this game. And then we'll talk a little bit about what the Blue Jackets have got coming up, because it's kind of a tough they've got a tough game coming up on Friday against Boston. And we're going to do a full preview of that on Friday's episode. But first, let's go out some Cannonballs. The Arizona Coyotes. Honestly, I'm inclined to be like, no one gets a Cannonball because no one tried. But I am going to give the Cannonball of the game to Kent Johnson. Third goal in 3 games. It was a really nice goal, and I think he deserves nice things. So he's getting today's Cannonball. The Rangers, I'm going to give Cannonball of the game to Igor Chinikov. Scoring his first of the season, he's looked really dangerous. I'm glad that it finally came through for him. And is it unfair of me to give Kent Johnson Cannonball of the game on Saturday? For twice in 3 games, maybe. However, I think that's what I'm gonna do, because first NHL goal deserves a Cannonball. So Penguins game, Kent Johnson. Rangers game, Igor Chinikov. Arizona Coyotes game, Kent Johnson again. At some point, I'm gonna have to keep track of all these, because I'm supposed to be seeing who got the most Cannonballs at the end of the season. But that's the Cannonballs of the game. Just a little quick intermission before Boston, man, they are rolling to start the season. Like I said, we're going to do a full preview on Friday's episode, so I don't want to get too into it. But they beat up on Dallas last night. They continue to look strong despite missing, I believe Brad Marchand isn't even in the lineup at the minute. They are currently sitting at the top of the Atlantic. They are actually tied with Vegas for top of the league with 12 points. They are 6-1 to start the season, and it's just, I don't know. It's going to be, that's a tough matchup, especially after what was supposed to be a fairly easy matchup. I think they're going to have to come out hard in this game, and they're going to have to come out strong, and they're going to have to do it for the full 60 minutes. Like all of those cliches that you hear people talk about, like the Blue Jackets are going to have to do all of them. They're going to have to play at the level of the Bruins, because I do think that's partially the Blue Jackets' problem. And I talked about this, the past couple of seasons of covering this team and watching this team, not just as a fan, but as someone who is, ostensibly analyzing them. The Blue Jackets play to the level of their opponent, and so sometimes that means that they drop a game like this against teams like Arizona, because they play to the level of Arizona, who are not very good. However, that does mean that sometimes they pull out huge wins against, like Tampa Bay, or they had a really big win against Carolina last season. They just took it to the Rangers 2 nights ago, or 3 nights ago, when time makes no sense. But that means that they can play with the Bruins. They can match them in theory. Will they do it in practice? Maybe not. But in theory, I do think that this is a team that the Blue Jackets can beat. I think I think losing to a very weak Arizona team and then turning around, stomping on the league-leading Boston Bruins feels like an extremely Blue Jackets thing to do. I'm still not convinced that they'll actually win the game, but it's a thing that's possible in my mind. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail on Friday's episode. Tomorrow's episode, we're talking to Kat Silverman about goaltending, because there is something weird going on with the goalies this season, and I want to find out why. And Kat Silverman knows more about goalies than basically anyone else I know, so she's going to come and talk to us about Mazlikins, about Korpisalo, about Tarasov, maybe about the minor league goalies as well. We'll see where we go, but that's going to be tomorrow's episode. Thank you for listening to this episode. I did less yelling than I planned to, but I think maybe that's okay. Thank you for making it your first listen of the day, or your first watch of the day. I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find this podcast at LO_Blue Jackets. If you have comments, questions, criticisms, you can email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. Thank you once again for listening. Hopefully the Blue Jackets are less trash the next time we recap a game, which will be next week, I think. So, but we'll see you tomorrow for goalie talk with Kat Silverman, and until then, make sure you stay locked on.